What's up, guys? Edrone here. Today we are going to be going over my new Grinderino 3.5-inch custom build Walksnail Avatar HD Nano. Stay tuned. Alright guys, this video was a while in the making. I've been working on this video for probably a couple of months now, trying to get this all wrapped up, trying to get the build done, get everything set up so we can have the best possible review of the new Grinderino frame from Bot Grinder and Umagod collaboration, as well as review the Walksnail Avatar HD Nano Kit V2. This is the lower latency version. We have Racemode now, and yeah, there's going to be a full build spec, all the parts, everything for this build is going to be down in the video description. Make sure you check that out. And we're also going to be running the Instago 3 for the high definition footage for this quadcopter. I'm really excited about this build, so without further ado, let's get into it. The 3.5-inch Grinderino, here it is, guys. This is everything you get in the kit. Really nice high quality carbon here. Really simple design as well. This is really easy to put together. Take your one long screw and you're just going to put this little block spacer here, attach the bottom plate with the mid plate. You'll have a little square here in the middle. Don't tighten this up all the way, just kind of get it a little bit snug. You want this to be able to move freely. That way when we line up our arms, we can get everything lined up, including the little spacer block here in between the two plates. And the arms, you can mount them. You can't mount these wrong pretty much. They're the same size whether you flip them around. Nice design. Love how easy and easy this kit comes together. Makes it almost impossible to screw up this this frame build. Go ahead and lock in your arms. Get them lined up with the little square spacer in between. And then you're going to go ahead and take these longer screws here that come in the kit, and you're going to go ahead and tighten these up snug. Don't tighten them up too tight all the way. You want to be able to manipulate this if you need to line up the other arms. Now you can see what it looks like with all the arms installed. Now we can go ahead and snug this up, making sure all the arms lined up with the block. And now this is one heck of a nice, easy build here so far, and a really nice looking frame. We're going to be using the included camera mounts, 3D printed camera mounts that come with the frame here. I like that these are included because, you know, this gives you a wide variety of options for different size cameras, and they're really easy to mount. Just put them here on the two front posts, slide these on, and the top plate goes right over top, and there pretty much build is pretty much done for the frame itself. So let's go ahead and put on this nice shiny new grip that comes included in the kit as well. Love that this is included. Every frame should be included with grip 100%. And just make sure you have it right about where you want your battery. Keep in mind if you're going to have an HD camera on the front, which we will, want to have space for that. And ooh, peeling that off, never been so satisfying peeling off that paper for that grip. All right, as far as this the board mounting, we're going to be using an all-in-one board, which is the 25mm mounting. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tighten these M2 screws with these included M2 nuts here, and we're going to run the screws all the way up so we have them all mounted around for the 25mm mounting. We're going to get ready to install the 4 motors on the Grinderino, and we're going to be using these Emax Eco 1407 3300 kV, and we're going to be running these on 4S. And the reason I like to go with this style motor here is because I like to be able to use the same driver for all my quads to change props. It's just a preference of mine. This is going to add, you know, a little bit of weight having this shaft versus having like the 2 posts with the screws. We're going to be using the 1.5mm driver to go ahead and install the 4 motors. Now the screw that comes with the Emax motors is too short. That's coming in at 7mm. So 7mm for that screw there. I went ahead and picked up these extra screws here from this little hardware kit, and I'll post a link for that in the description. But that's going to put us at a nice 8mm So we're going to go ahead and use the 8mm screw here to be able to attach the 4 motors. As you can see, with the 8mm screw, we're going to have plenty of thread to be able to come up and hold the motor onto the arm, but it's not going to be too much to where it's going to cause an issue getting too close to the windings. And what I like to do is just go caddy corner across the motor here, and I just put these in loosely until I have all 4 in, because if you snug it up too tight, it can make lining them up a little bit more difficult. So just put them in just kind of snug, not really tight, and then we can see when we tighten down, we got plenty of grip on that motor, but we're not coming through the top of the motor base, so we won't have any issue with the screws being too long, touching the windings underneath. And this should definitely provide us with plenty of grip to be able to hold the motors onto the arms. Now that we have all 4 screws installed and snug, holding the motor onto the arm, to get the proper torque setting, take your 1.5mm driver and hold it with 2 fingers. Go ahead and tighten up with the 2 fingers until it becomes a little bit uncomfortable. You'll feel it snug up, and then that's good. And do that for all 4 screws. You want it to be snug, but you don't want to over tighten. We have got all 4 motors installed. Definitely was an easy process, and I like that the arms underneath have extra holes, so if you have different types of motors with different motor bases, this is going to give you a wide variety of ways to mount your motors. You can see what the motors look like on here now. Now that we have the motors installed, the next step is going to be to go ahead and install this Reaper all-in-one ESC flight controller combo here. And I wanted to go ahead and try all-in-one board on this 3.5-inch setup. Typically I would use a 20x20 stack, but that does add a little bit of additional weight. Plus you have 2 boards, whereas this, put everything on 1 board so we can have a really nice clean stack here. This all-in-one board features the F7 flight controller, which utilizes the MPU 6000 gyro. It has a 45 amp ESC and is rated for 2 to 6S voltage. In the pack with the all-in-one board, you get both 14 gauge and 16 gauge wire. So this is going to give you the wire, for our purposes, we're going to be using the thicker wire, the 14 gauge. If you were putting this on a Whoop, something lighter, then you would obviously want to go with the 16 gauge wire that's provided. This board comes with a 35 volt 470 Rubicon low ESR capacitor here with 470 microfarads. Comes with a XT60 and XT30 connector here. We're going to be using the XT30. Comes with a bag of some spare gummies, some nuts, some heat shrink, and some M2 hardware here to be able to mount the board up. We're going to go ahead and install the 4 gummies that are provided here to be able to soft mount the board. In order to install these gummies, the easiest way I've found is to pinch the gummies like this, start one end into the corner here of the board, and then just kind of push it up and twist it. And sometimes if you push it up and twist it, it'll come right through. The smaller they are, the more difficult it is, but there we go. So after you twist it, it'll just come right through. See what kind of a low profile the all-in-one board is going to have here. And now we need to go ahead and get our capacitor and power wire and XT30 soldered on. The longer lead on a capacitor is usually always positive, and then our negative is shorter, and we'll also have a little minus sign for the negative side of the capacitor, so we know how to wire this up correctly. And you also get this wire harness and these wires here. It comes with the flight control, it comes with the all-in-one board. Now we're going to go ahead and cut all the motor wires to length. Go ahead and pre-tin all of the motor output pads here on the all-in-one board and solder up all the motors. And as you can see, we have the orientation correct on the all-in-one board. We have motor 1 coming out the back here, motor 2 coming out the side here, motor 4 coming off this way here. We have motor 3 coming off the back this way. Alright, so the solder pads on this are really tiny, so if you're not too comfortable with soldering, then I would suggest get a 20 by 20 stack and don't do the all-in-one board. Now have all the motors soldered up. Now we're going to be installing this BEC here. This is a voltage regulator. We're going to take the main 4S voltage coming in, and we're going to be outputting 9 volt. We could run off the 5 volt regulator off of the board, however, we're going to be running our receiver off of that same 5 volt. So I don't want to put too much strain on the 5 volt voltage regulator on the all-in-one board here. Next, we went ahead and installed 4 little M2 nuts on top of the all-in-one board here to keep this secure, but we don't tighten them down too much because we don't want to take out the dampening that the soft mounting provides. So with the 3D printed arm piece here, special shout out to Vampire for printing these out. Looks really good. They basically just squeeze these ends in just a little bit, and it will push right into the end of the arm, lining up. Then we just attach a zip tie to secure the 3D printed arm protector to the arm. Now you can see what they look like all installed. And while they do add a little bit of weight to the build, they're also going to add some adequate protection here on the ends of the arms to prevent slow down the delamination of the carbon on the arms, as well as gives a little bit more extra motor protection here on the sides and on the front. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and install the receiver, and you can either use zip ties, a 3D printed mount, or I use these little small black little hair rubber bands. They seem to hold it on there pretty good, and if you use a couple of them, they can be fairly durable as well. And to stick the receiver down, we're just going to use this little double-sided sticky foam here that I got at the Dollar Tree. And this is really, the adhesive is really good on this. It'll definitely hold the receiver down, keep it secure in the back of the frame. Then we're going to go ahead and secure it with a zip tie to make sure it doesn't move around. Go ahead and get this wired up. In order to get the receiver wired up, we're going to go ahead and pre-tin 4 pads here on the F7 all-in-one, the 5 volt, ground, RX, and TX. Okay, we got this receiver soldered up here. Pads are really small, so just take your time. Because this all-in-one flight controller here has only one 5 volt BEC that we're going to be running our Crossfire receiver off of, we're going to need another option to power the Walksnail video transmitter. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this Diatone Mamba little 9 volt BEC here, and this will do 5 volt or 9 volt, but in order to do 9 volt we have to short out these 2 pads here where it says 9 volt, and then we're going to go ahead and wire this directly to our power in and ground, and then we'll be able to feed 9 volt to the Walksnail Avatar VTX for power. Okay, now we have our positive and negative soldered up to the 12 volt to 30 volt input. Now have the power to the Walksnail VTX hooked up to the 9 volt out and the ground. Then on the other side, all we have to do now is wire this to the positive and negative pads on the all-in-one. Now we'll go ahead and put the heat shrink on. That way this BEC will be protected from shorts on the carbon. Alright, now you can see we've got everything wired up for the power to the BEC to the Walksnail. We're going to go ahead and tidy all this up. Go ahead and solder up the RX and TX to here, and then we'll put the BEC underneath of the all-in-one board, tidy that up a little bit, and install this Walksnail in the rear on top of the receiver, and get the antenna connected as well. and get the camera mounted, and then we're going to be getting close to having this build finished up. Now you can see where the VTX Walksnail has been mounted in the rear. We went ahead and soft mounted it as well with a couple of these little gummies. So we got room for the receiver underneath and definitely have room to put the top plate on. So now we'll go ahead and get the antenna connected, and we're going to run that out of the back. And then we'll go ahead and get these two wires soldered up, and then we'll get the camera installed, and then that will pretty much wrap it up for the build. We now have our RX and TX of the Walksnail VTX wired to the TX and RX of the flight controller. So easy to get that on there, not too bad. Just make sure that the RX of the VTX goes to the TX on the flight controller, and the TX on the VTX goes to the RX on the flight controller. Now we're going to get ready to mount the camera in the front here, and we're just going to be using the little 3D printed mounts included with the Grinderino here. And we do have an option to install this bracket if we wanted to fill in the gap a little bit more. However, I think it's going to be just fine installing this without the bracket to save on a little bit of weight. I think we'll just go ahead and mount this using the front hole to push the camera forward as possible. That way we get the standoffs hopefully mostly out of view. Now we've got the camera installed. I want to let you know I went ahead and used the small little little plastic washers that come with the Avatar HD Nano kit, and the smallest screws, and that seemed to snug it up to where it won't move around and change angles on you easily. So that's a good option. I always mount the little washers on the outside. Makes it a little bit easier when you're installing them. You can also put them on the inside if you wish. Just a personal preference thing. But you can see we have the camera mounted in there, and we use the hole all the way to the closest front. That way, hopefully we'll get a lot of the standoffs out of view of the camera, so we can go ahead and utilize this HD setup. Got the VTX antenna for the Avatar HD Nano in the antenna mount here. We're going to simply connect the UFL, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten this up. Right here on the VTX, just line it up and get it into place. And simply just push down, and you should feel a little bit of little lock in. And now you can see we're locked in here, and we'll end up tucking this back into underneath of the VTX here, this little excess that we have. But before we do that, we want to go ahead and put this little locking connector plate back on top of the VTX, and then we're going to go ahead and just tighten this down. There we are. Just 2 screws. Get them good and snug. And then once you tighten this down, that will protect the UFL from popping off, and then you can go ahead and tuck your excess wire here down underneath of the VTX. Now, the only inconvenience about mounting the VTX in this orientation is, for one, having the VTX wire come out the side, and 2, the firmware update port here is on the rear, and now we have the antenna mounted, which is going to make accessing that plug more difficult. So we're going to go ahead and end up taking this mount back off, plugging in the firmware update cable, and then going ahead and updating the firmware and unlocking this VTX to max power. So we're going to go ahead and get that done now. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in the computer. That way we can go ahead and update the firmware. So you're going to go ahead and go over to caddxfpv.com /pages and then /download Caddx FPV. You're going to come down here and you're looking for the Avatar 34.40.15 beta firmware. I'm going to go ahead and click that and install that onto your computer. Once you have that installed, you're going to go ahead and download, and then what you'll do is now we'll go ahead and get ready to connect the drone to the computer using the provided USB to the Avatar VTX, and then we'll go ahead and power it up with the 4S LiPo, and then we'll go ahead and save the firmware file onto the actual Nano VTX. Going to go ahead and turn our fan on to keep the VTX cool while it sits here and updates on the bench. Go ahead and plug in the USB connection here. And you won't get anything on the computer until you apply power. So let's go ahead and apply power here. Okay, we have applied power. And I can see that here. It's going to ask us to scan. We're just going to say no. And here you can see we have USB drive D. And that is the VTX. So now we can go back over to our downloads. Pick up the file folder here. Go ahead and open this up. And we're going to click on that sky. And I'm going to right click and do a copy. Come here back to the USB drive. And we're going to go ahead and right click and paste. Now we have pasted the firmware onto the VTX. Next we're going to disconnect the computer. And now VTX should be flashing green, blinking green. We're going to push and hold on the link button for 8 seconds. And here's the link button here. Okay, the LED turned off and now it went to red, indicating that now it is doing the firmware update. So now you want to make sure that you don't unplug power. You want to wait until you get a blink green LED. So make sure you have a good fully charged battery when you do this process. And then once we get the green light, we know that the firmware update is successful. There it is. There's our green light. It blinked green. And now it goes back to the binding mode here. So now we'll go ahead and unplug our power. Next, we're going to go ahead and update the firmware on this VRX module, as well as go ahead and unlock it. So we're going to need a couple things to do this. Going to need a micro SD card. We're going to use this SanDisk 32 gigabyte. We're going to need a full battery to power the VRX module. And we're going to need our high definition cable. And I'm going to, instead of hooking this to the goggles, I'm going to hook it to a monitor so you guys can see what I'm seeing. And then you'll need something to push down on the bind button here. I'm just going to use this little metal pin right here. And we'll go ahead and get all this updated, unlocked, and ready to go. Okay, we've got our VRX connected to this little HD monitor so I can show you what's going on here. And what we're going to want to do now is go to, we can just use a little wheel here. We want to go to the menu. We want to come here to the settings tab, scroll over to record set, and we're going to go ahead and format the micro SD card in the VRX module. Go ahead and format. Okay, we've taken the micro SD card out of the VRX module that's been formatted in the module, and we're going to put it in our card reader and connect to our computer. Okay, we're going to go back to our downloads folder that we had the firmware for the VTX. And now we're going to go ahead and grab the Avatar SE ground here. SE is for the VRX module. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. Then we're going to go over here to the USB drive D, and we're going to paste this on the root directory of our micro SD card. Wait for that. And now we're ready to take our file here, our micro SD card, back out of the computer, and then we'll put the micro SD card back in the VRX module, and we will get ready to flash and update the firmware on the VRX module. So we have our micro SD card with the updated firmware back into the VRX module. We have everything connected to our monitor. Now we need to go ahead and take this little tool here, and we're going to push and hold in on the bind button for 8 seconds. You'll get a beep. The screen will go black on your goggles or display, whichever you're using. And we should start to hear a constant beeping coming from the VRX module, indicating that the firmware is updating. This process can take up to 10 minutes. Make sure you have a fully charged battery when you do this. Once the firmware is done, we should get a reboot back on the screen, and we'll show you that once we're completed. Now that we got the long beep, the VRX went ahead and updated the firmware. Now we got back to this screen. Now, next is very important. We're going to go ahead and go to the menu. Going to scroll over to the settings. Going to go over here to the device. And we're going to go to reset all. Click on reset all. Whether to restore factory settings. Okay. The confirm button. There we go. Go back to the menu here. Scroll over. Settings. Format micro SD card. Now we can go ahead and put the micro SD card back into the computer and get ready to unlock the VRX. We're back to the Caddx FPV website. We have our micro SD card in the computer here that's been formatted in the VRX module. Now we're going to go to the FCC unlock procedure. We're going to take both of these files here, the power and the STD file. All right, we're going to go ahead and take these two downloaded files here. We're going to go ahead and make a copy. We're going to come over here to the micro SD card. We're going to paste these onto the root directory of the micro SD card, and we can go ahead and safely go ahead and eject this and put this back into the VRX module. We've placed the micro SD card back into the VRX module with the unlock channel and power. Now we're going to go ahead and apply power to the VRX module. Now we're ready to go ahead and bind the Walksnail VTX to the Walksnail VRX. Get these two talking. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to power up our VTX. So we're going to go ahead and apply power here. We should get a flashing green light on the VTX. And we're going to go ahead and push the bind button once. Okay, the VTX turned red. I'm going to push the bind button on the VRX. Now they should get linked up here momentarily. We have everything linked up. Now we need to go ahead to do the race mode. Push on the menu button. Go to your settings. Come down to device. And right here you can see it says switch mode. We can change this to race or standard. So we'll put that to race. Go ahead and confirm. And the goggles are going to restart. Yes. Wait for them to restart, and that fan noise, I have a fan blowing over here to keep the VTX cool while it's on the bench. Always a good idea. Let this go ahead and boot up here. Give it just a second. And once it boots back up, we should be in race mode. And that's going to allow for the lower latency modes. Okay, connected here. Alright, now we go back to our channel. And now you can see we have channels R1 to R8. Go to our channel. Let's go to R8. Click on that. Alright, so now we're in R8. And then if we go to the settings, you'll see now we're locked in high frame rate. Our resolution is also locked at 540. and our bit rate is locked at standard. So that indicates that we are now in a race mode. Okay. And we can change our transmit power to 700 milliwatts. That's what we're going to be testing this out on. As far as getting the receiver bound to the TBS Tango 2, I'm going to go ahead and link video down in the video description, as well as pop a card up on the screen, so that if you need help getting bound to Crossfire, that video will help you out and show you how to get bound up and connected. And if you have something else, then you don't have to worry about it, obviously, and go ahead and continue on with this video. We are going to go ahead and put Betaflight 4.3.2 on here, just because that's what I use in all my quads. I like the stable feeling of 4.3. I have not moved over to 4.4 yet. So what we've done is we've rebooted into bootloader mode. We've got the correct board picked out for the Foxeer, and we're now flashing Betaflight 4.3.2. And then once this is done, we'll go ahead and go into Betaflight and set everything up. We got a program successful, so we'll go over here to connect. And we're going to apply custom defaults. All right, this is just letting us know that the accelerometer has not been calibrated, so we'll go ahead and close that out. Now what we want to do is have the quadcopter sitting on a smooth, flat surface and nice and level with no vibrations whatsoever. Get it nice and straight there. I'm going to go ahead and reset the axis here, and then we're going to go ahead and hit calibrate accelerometer. Okay, now we got the accelerometer calibrated. Now we're going to basically move the quadcopter to see if it's moving in the correct orientation like the model on the screen, and it is. As you can see, with the nose facing forward, the drone is moving exactly like it is on screen, indicating that our all-in-one board is in the correct orientation for the way it's set up in Betaflight. We don't have to do any modifications there. All right, next we're going to jump over to the ports tab. And now we need to go ahead and select the correct UART for our receiver and also for the Walksnail VTX. For the receiver, we went ahead and put that on UART 4. So what we're going to do is turn off UART 1 for the Serial RX and turn on Serial RX for UART 4. Then we're going to come down here and save and reboot. And we can see it took it. It didn't change. It stayed where it was. And then we also need to get the Walksnail set up. So let's go ahead and turn on UART 7 for the configuration MSP. This will let the flight controller know that we are using UART 7 to talk to the Walksnail Nano VTX. So we'll save and reboot. Let's go over to the receiver tab, and we need to go ahead and make sure this is set to serial here, and we're going to change this to Crossfire, save and reboot. Now what we need to do is, because this particular all-in-one board does not power the receiver from the micro USB port, we're going to have to go ahead and plug in our battery and turn on our transmitter and turn on our controller and see if we have communications. Okay, we have the powered up the all-in-one board here, and you can see we do have movement on the sticks, and they are moving the correct channels. Now, if you get to this point and it's not moving the correct channels, you want to go ahead and swap around this channel mapping here. Try all of the presets here and see if that fixes it. If not, you can try to type them in manually. And then if you don't have any communication with your, if you don't have any movement at all when you move these sticks, then double check, make sure you have the correct UART selected for your ports. Make sure you have the serial receiver provider correctly. and make sure you have the receiver mode in the serial. And then sometimes I've noticed that you can just switch the RX and TX wire on your flight controller. Even if you know for 100% fact that you've wired them up correctly, try switching those wires and see if that will get you communication and get your receiver talking to your flight controller. Just check that and make sure. And now we're ready to move on and set up our switches. So we're going to jump over here to the modes tab. And then with the quadcopter powered up and your transmitter all powered up, we're going to go ahead and go to add range for the arming switch. We have it set to auto. So all we have to do now is select the switch that we want to use, which for me will be this switch here. Now you can see when I push the switch, the little indicator moves, but this yellow bar is not over top of that, and that's what we need to have in order for the switch to remain active. Now that we've moved the yellow bar, you can see that the yellow tick mark is now underneath of this yellow bar, indicating that this will now activate the arming switch. I'm going to go ahead and save. Now, once we've saved, we can actually double check to make sure it's working properly. When we hit the arm button, this box here should light up. And it did. Now it's gonna light up in red for a safety feature because Betaflight knows that it's plugged into the computer, so it won't arm the quadcopter in this stage, but we know that the arming switch is working properly. Now we can go ahead and set up our other ranges, the same method. Just pick the ranges you want. I'm going to add angle mode. I'll add horizon mode. Obviously, there'll be acro on here. And then I'll add a beeper. And then I will add the flip over after crash. Same method. We have all the switches set up. I'm going to come back to the configuration tab here. And there's some things that we can change in here as well as go ahead and turn off the quad. We're going to go ahead and unplug the quadcopter. That way it doesn't overheat sitting here. All right, now that we're back in the configuration tab, I'm going to turn off barometer and magnetometer. We're not going to need that for this particular build. We're going to leave this the same, the 8K, 8K. That's the way it came from the factory defaults. All this can stay the same. We're going to add our craft name here. So this is going to be the Grinderino. And we're going to change the maximum arming angle here to 180. That way, if we're upside down in a tree or on a roof, we will arm. So let's go ahead and save and reboot after those changes. Go back to the configuration tab. Also going to select RX lost and RX set for this D-shot beacon. That way the motors will actually beep if we lose our receiver, and also when we set it on a switch, which we already did in the modes tab. I don't have a beeper installed, so we're just going to leave all these on. And then we're going to make sure air mode is checked on all the time. That's how I like to fly. And we have the OSD turned on. And that's pretty much it for the configuration tab. Let's go ahead and move over to the PID tuning tab. Let's go ahead and change the rates for my actual rates. I use 600 max rate on roll and pitch, and I do have it set to actual rates. That's just the way I do it. And then for the yaw, I actually like that to be at 500. So we'll go ahead and save. Let's go ahead and put a preset on here. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look for our categories. And we're going to look for tune. Okay. Now we can look and see. We should have a, here we go, Superfly, 3-inch to 4-inch, 4S or 6S. This is an official tune. I don't think there's any other ones that we can use that I would be comfortable with. Yeah, we're going to stick with this. Superfly here, it's been tried and tested, and it's an official one, so we know we should get good results. We're going to go ahead and go on here, and we're going to do it with HD camera. with HD camera, RPM filtering, and then we can do Crossfire for dynamic. That's the way I have it set. Go ahead and pick D-Shot 600 or D-Shot 300, agree, save and reboot, and it's going to apply the Superfly tune preset, and we'll see how that flies. And then as long as that flies good, we'll leave that on there. If not, we can tweak it. Now let's go to the motors tab. We already set up the D-Shot 600. We are already set up on bidirectional D-Shot, so that's already set up from the factory. We already have our motor pole set. I like to run reverse props, so I'm going to go ahead and check motor direction is reversed. Save and reboot. Now that we're in the motors tab, we need to make sure that the motors are spinning the correct direction, as well as make sure the correct motors are spinning in order for the motor order. So in order to do that, we're going to have to plug in our battery again with the props off. Make sure your props are off for this part. Go ahead and plug it in. Okay, make sure we're free from obstructions here. Now let's go ahead and check the motor. Let's see. We can either reorder the motors here, or we can just come down here to the master, click I understand the risks, and then what we can do is take the master slider, click on it, and then move with the arrow up button. We'll move that until all the motors start spinning, and then we'll see what direction they're spinning. Okay, so we have some changes to make for the motor directions. Now let's also check to make sure our motor order is correct. So we'll move motor number 1. That's correct. Motor number 2. That's correct. Motor number 4. Or, I'm sorry, motor 3. That's correct. And motor number 4. That's correct. So our motor order is correct. So we have the board, we have the all-in-one board sitting on the frame in the correct orientation, so that we have the proper motor order for the ESC. We don't have to change any of that. Now let's go ahead and stop the motors. We're going to go to motor direction. I understand the risks. We're going to do the wizard, and we're going to hit start with props off. Now we can see which motors we need to reverse. Motor number 1 needs to be reversed, so we're going to click on that. Motor number 4 needs to be reversed, so we're going to click on that. Motor 2 is correct, and motor 3 is correct. So now we're going to stop and close. And now if we go ahead and get our motors running again, they should all be spinning the correct direction now. Going to go ahead and click on the master. Just double check, make sure they're spinning the correct direction. And these are. So that's good, that's all done. Go ahead and hit stop on the motors. If you do see a little save here, click on that, but ours already saved. So we're all good, all set up on the motors. And you see here, we can actually check the RPM filtering, make sure it's correct. You see we have 0% errors here while it's not running. So if we arm, we should start to see some of these numbers changing. So let's go ahead and click I understand the risks. Go ahead and click on the master slider and then watch the numbers change. That shows you that the RPM filtering is working. You can see the numbers changing. Always good to double check that as well. Stop the motors. And we're ready to move on to the next part. Now it's time to go ahead and set up the OSD for the Walksnail. And in order to do that, we have to tell Betaflight in the CLI tab that we want to use the MSP for the OSD. So in order to do that, we're going to type in set OSD, set space OSD underscore display port underscore device space equal space MSP. Enter. Okay, now you're going to go ahead and type in save. So now what we have to do is type in set space DisplayPort underscore MSP underscore serial space equal space, and then one less than the UART you use. So we use UART 7. We're going to type in 6. Enter. It took. And then type save. Enter. Now, for you guys wondering, man, could this be a sub 250 build? Absolutely, it could. And the way it is now, it's not going to be that way. It's going to be over the 249 gram weight limit for registration. However, if you'd like to make this into a sub 250 build, all you need to do is get rid of all the 3D prints, get rid of the action camera mount, and just use the Walksnail DVR. And instead of using this 850 GMB, slim down to something like this 525 milliamp 4S RDQ pack, and you will can definitely make this into a sub 250 build. Ready to go ahead and give this Grinderino the proper Maiden Flight. Special shout out to Vampire for all the awesome 3D prints, and my man Windchill for the prop recommendations as well. These are the Hurricane 3.5 by 2 by 3. They are the Hurricane 3520s, and you can see have just enough clearance to clear the front standoffs, and in the rear as well, definitely have plenty of space. I think that's going to make for a really great feel. We're going to be using this GMB 850 milliamp 4S pack for the flight, and then we have the ND filter. This is the ND8 installed here on the Instago 3 to get some nice high definition footage that will definitely compare back and forth to the DVR of the Walksnail as well. Let's get ready to take this out for the Maiden Flight. With the Maiden Flight of the Grinderino here, and we are using the stock antennas on the VRX module. We are in the lower latency mode here, the race mode for the Walksnail. We are on channel 8, so hopefully this gives us the best signal option for this high Wi-Fi area here. Okay, we've got the Instago 3 for the high definition footage as well, and that has an ND filter on it, ND8, and then we will put the settings up on the screen for that as well. And we're running this with no stabilization to see how this quad feels. Let's go ahead and put an acro mode here. And here we go. And we've got all the firmware to the newest version on my HD0 goggles as well as on the Walksnail. This is all the newest firmware. So without further ado, guys, let's see how this feels. I'm just going to fly it around here to get a hang of the feel of the quad. But off the bat, it feels a little bit more pixelated than the Walksnail I've flown before. But the quad feels like it's got so much power. Oh wow, it's got a really good weight to it. And it feels really good, guys. It has a little bit of a wobble there. This is with the Superfly tune. And we are set to 700 milliwatt, I believe, for this Walksnail. And I just want to get a hang of the feel of the quad before we do the video test. Just see how it looks back here. It feels really good, though. I haven't flown in a while, so forgive the wobbly sticks here. But the quad itself feels really good, man. Like, plenty of power. Little bit of a bobble there, just a little bit. So I'm sure there's a little bit more we could do to get that bobble out. Let's go ahead and go around and do a video test. Right now the video's been locked in. You see there we're showing 35 millisecond. So the latency does feel a bit better than the other Walksnail version I use. Let's see if we can get over here around the corner. This was a really bad spot back here, and it seems to be holding on fine. Wow. Okay, I'm actually surprised. It's handling great back here. Didn't feel stuttery or laggy or anything. Actually feels really good. Let's see how far we can go, guys. Let's see, can we actually get all the way around with... Wow. Okay, guys, I'm impressed. We are all the way around the back corner where I normally struggle with video reception with the HD0. And the Walksnail on this race mode setting actually went all the way around, and the video was like more than fine. More than fine. So we're getting some really good penetration here. Really good penetration. Wow. Now it's getting a little bit blocky, but still, I mean, I can see everything. I feel confident flying around. This is pretty impressive, guys. Let me fly around one more time the opposite way, and I'm anxious to see how much better this system will do with the Lumineer Axii antennas that I got. A little blocky right there. You can see where it's really penetrating. And I'm down low as well, guys. So really good penetration test here. I am really impressed. Wow. Let's look at our battery here. A little bit of prop wash there. Still at 3.7. The quad feels really locked in, though. I mean, it's just... The latency is not bad at all. Like, I can really definitely fly this, and it doesn't feel, you know, me as a HD0 pilot primarily, this doesn't feel stuttery or laggy. It just has been a consistent feel pretty much the whole time. Let's bring it back, and I'd like to go ahead and swap these antennas out, and let's see how these other antennas do. I bet they're going to do even better. Let's go ahead and switch antennas here for the Walksnail VRX. We're going to be using these micro Axii Stubby 2. These are the left-hand circular polarized RP SMA, and they are gray in color. Now we've got the new antennas on here, the Lumineer Axies Stubbies. Let's see how our video performance does now. Second flight with the new upgraded Lumineer Axii Stubby antennas. Yeah, first off, you know, compared to the other Walksnail that I tested before, you know, this image quality is a little bit lower. But the feeling just feels way better. It doesn't feel like there's any lag or stuttering. It's just more consistent feel overall, and I really do like it. Honestly, this would probably be the mode that I would fly in all the time, just because of how good it feels. Let's check the video quality. Let's see how it looks going around back here, where it's really having to fight through a lot of Wi-Fi and concrete firewalls. Penetration looks great. Back here in the back corner, still looks perfectly flyable. So this system's doing a really good job at penetrating the Wi-Fi and on R8 as well. And these antennas, it's hard to say how much of a difference these antennas are making, but yeah, I mean, it seems like it overall it's a little bit less blotchy in the really really bad areas behind myself. Gotta keep on my battery voltage. Having such a good time. Let's go ahead. All right, we got low battery now. Let's bring it back. But I just want to say huge shout out to Bot and Tommy for this awesome frame. Really do love this Grinderino frame. Really did have a great time flying. It felt amazing. And definitely a huge shout out to Caddx as well for sending out the Walksnail Avatar HD Nano Kit. I was very impressed with it. It was working really good. Great penetration. The only issue I kind of had with the system was if I were to bump this VRX module, sometimes it would kind of get me like a little bit of a rainbow color effect in my video. But other than that, everything was working great, man. Great penetration out here with all the Wi-Fi and firewalls. It worked really good. And to be able to have, you know, a 3.5-inch small little quadcopter like this feel like a 5-inch, and also be able to have that penetration of the Walksnail at 700 milliwatt, it felt really amazing. Like, there's no boundaries to what you can do with this quadcopter. So I'll put everything, links down in the video description. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please, please like, share, subscribe, and there's going to be more FPV custom drone builds on the channel, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, thanks so much for watching. Edrone out.